Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, we're going to honor the legacy of the great John Regan, bass player for Frehley's Comet, Peter Frampton, and much more. Sadly, yesterday, John passed away, but we're going to honor his legacy here right now on this episode. Alrighty, let's jump in. Let's get started, everybody. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I have with me my buddy, my partner in crime, the chemist, Mr. Vincent LaRussa.
Can I be a chemist today?
You could be a chemist today, sure. You could be whatever you want to be.
Okay. All
Okay?
right.
I put no
Am I
limitations.
am I going in the army? Wasn't
That's
that
right.
the big
Be
wasn't that
what
a
you
big
want to
like
be. I think so.
80s, right? Be all that you can be
In the
in the
army.
army.
Yes, that is
Yeah.
that was their slogan. But
Yeah.
yes, you're allowed to be anybody you want to be. But today we originally were planning on doing an episode for the Kiss Off the Soundboard series, the new CD that came out. And we're also going to do one of those, and we are going to release that, probably on Monday. But unfortunately, last night we heard the sad news that John Regan passed away. And I
Hmm.
thought that John deserves his own little tribute and little episode here. So I figured let's jump on. Let's do that one first. Let's honor John. Let's honor his legacy. And we'll get to the Off the Soundboard in another episode in a day or two. I'll release that. So, I yesterday had a hectic day between work. My son was home from college, and it was like 6 o'clock last night. And I started to see, I think Todd Howarth was the first one that posted something cryptic like, oh, this one's way, way, way too close to home. And I was like, all right, that's a band member. And he's like, I can't say more right now. And then I think I saw Lydia Chris posted something and she said it was John. I'm like, oh my God, I think John had literally just posted something on Facebook yesterday in the morning. So it seems like whatever happened, and I'm not here to speculate, what happened, but it seems like it was probably somewhat sudden. I know he was talking about having plans in this summer to do different things. And it just is a quick reminder of how, all of our heroes are getting older. And here it is, somebody who seemed okay in the morning, by the evening is gone. So, how did you find out? I know you were out yesterday. Also, you had a little bit of a hectic day.
Yeah, I found that from you actually. You
Oh, did
asked
you?
me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you asked me. I guess because perhaps you wanted to do something last night. So you
Yep.
said, are you home? Are you home or you're out?" And I told you I was out, and then you told me.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Look, obviously as Kiss fans, the first thought that comes to mind is always the whole Frehley's Comet. And, that's how I got introduced to John. But he was certainly much more than that, playing with Peter Frampton, playing with, he's on a Rolling Stones album. I mean, he really played with a lot of different, A-level celebrities and musicians, I should say, not celebrities,
Mhm.
musicians. And, as a musician yourself, just talk a little bit about John and some of, what he gave us.
Well, I mean, I think if you know any of the history, first off, with the Ace Frehley, he's kind of like the unsung hero, who really tried to, I think, really piece a lot of the projects together. It sounds like, especially, and this is not me, because I know there's a lot of stuff in the media recently with Ace, but it's not me, and trying to bash Ace at all. But, when Ace really wasn't up to snuff, let's just say that, as for his responsibilities, from what I understand, John was kind of like the guy who was like almost like the project manager
Yep.
for a lot of those albums. And I know he had put some compilations together, and some of it, what I kind of heard, and maybe you can clarify on some of the stuff, was a lot of that stuff was to try to recoup some money that I think he had said that was owed to him. And these are the
Yep.
type of things where if you're someone like Ace, like I don't know if those things were ever resolved, but now do you have some sort of regrets, like now that he's no longer here, that maybe I could have made amends? And as a musician, yeah, I remember a lot of posts he would say about Peter and you know, what a great time he had on those tours. And if you've seen any interviews with Peter Frampton, he's a very humble guy, just like John was. That's one of the things I remember. We from the early '90s when we went to the Kiss conventions up until the convention we went to in Indianapolis. I remember when you went over and started talking to those guys 4x8, and you're like, all right, how much are you charging? And they're like, charging? We're not charging anything. Come on,
Yep.
take a picture with us. And they were like the only ones from when I remember who did that,
That is true. Yes.
and just, and that said something to me, meeting Todd and talking with Todd and those guys, you really got to see at the core who these people were. And to me, the most important thing is just as human beings and just good people. And then on top of that, they're your musical heroes. So yeah, I think I think he did I think he was on that recording Eugene, which is a lot of classic. For me, I'm a bass player.
Yep.
It's like one of the greatest like bass tracks. I mean, if you go and just do a Google search on Eugene, yeah. If
I remember that bass line
yeah,
very vividly.
yeah.
Tonight,
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's a classic, but
it is.
supposedly co-written by Ace Frehley, but look that one up. But session player, and yeah,
Yeah,
I don't.
let me interject there. I mean, probably the most infamous or famous session that he ever did. He did the bass on the re-record of Dancing in the Street with Mick Jagger and David Bowie. I mean, think
God
about
awful
that.
video. A
Yeah,
god awful video.
the video was not.
Thank God. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank God he wasn't in the video, right? But I mean, think about that. He's on that recording, and I mean that
Mm-hmm.
was in 1985. I think that was for Live Aid, if I remember right. And
Yeah, I think so.
it just that's the type of caliber that he was surrounding himself with. That
Yeah.
somebody like Mick Jagger would want to have him playing bass on a song like that. So it just David Bowie as well. So you mentioned before some of those compilation CDs, and you're absolutely right. The 12 picks in the Loaded Deck CDs supposedly was, John looking to recoup some money that Ace owed him. So that's kind of sad, but they're still great products, and I'm always thankful that John put those out because we were able to get some, never before released live recordings, a couple of demos. So I was fortunate. I met John a number of times actually. You mentioned the Indie Expo. The first time I met John was 1988, I think it was. And it was right after Live Plus One came out, and they were doing it in store, the whole band. And Ace was ridiculously late that day. And
Was that at Tower Records?
yeah, I think so. I think it was.
Okay.
It was in Manhattan, I think in Tower
Yeah.
Records. And I remember us waiting outside forever to get in. And Ace eventually shows up. And when he shows up, he's, let's just say, not in the best shape.
Mm-hmm.
And we get there, and Ace really didn't even look up and say a word to anybody. But I remember John and Todd both being enormously nice, enormously friendly. That as much as I was disappointed that day that Ace was so disconnected, John and Todd left such an impression on me that day that I still left saying, damn, that was pretty cool. Even though my Kiss hero was a complete jerk, for lack of a better word, those other guys more than made up for it and made me still have a positive experience. Fast forward to, what was it? Probably about 5 years ago when they were doing the Return of the Comet thing. And I met John and the whole band after that. And again, same thing, super nice. And I have this memory of that concert. I went to the very first show they did, Return of the Comet, and I was hoping they'd do some of those really deep Frehley's Comet songs that, they first did in like 84, 85. Give It to Me Anyway has always been one of my favorite Comet songs ever. It's one of those songs that was on, one of those compilation things where they released, one of the demos from that. And I think it was the second song of the night that they started playing was Give It to Me Anyway. And I was in the front row of the show, and I was getting all throwed, as they were performing it. And John saw me, and he actually points and he's like, thumbs up, like that, hey, the song and you appreciate what this means. And I just thought that was kind of cool that even just in that moment, he was, just a regular guy, just a total regular guy. And I want to share a story. I had him on my podcast about 3 years ago. And I'll say a few things. Number one, he was so generous with his time. Him and I spent probably close to 2 hours talking. I released probably about an hour and 40 minutes of it. The other 20 minutes was just him and I just hanging out, shooting the breeze, not meant for distribution. But the reason I bring this up is not to plug that he was on my podcast at all, but because I think what I'm about to share says a lot about who John was as a person. So he had requested no video for the interview, which is fine. I've had other guests do that. That's fine. We want to do audio, we'll do audio only. That's okay. When I put it up on YouTube, you have to have some kind of visual on it. And usually in those cases, I just put one picture. That's it. That's the person I'm interviewing, and away we go. John's interview was so compelling and so good. I felt the need to go in and put pictures along the whole video that kind of symbolized and showed what he was talking about. So if he was talking about Peter Frampton, I found pictures of him and Peter Frampton together. If he was talking about Frehley's Comet in the 80s, I found those pictures. At one point, he was talking about his parents, and I found a picture of his parents, and I put that in there as well, just to say, hey, that's his parents. Here's a visual. Anyway, about 2 days after I released the podcast, he sends me a message. Mike, I want to thank you. First, great interview. I'll gladly come back and talk to you anytime. However, what I really want to thank you for is about the picture you put in your podcast of my parents brought a tear to my eye. Literally, I have the messages still. He says that brought a tear to my eye. And then he goes, that is probably the nicest thing anybody has ever done for me. Now, I'm assuming he means in an interview set and not in his whole life, right? But I saw that and I'm like, wow, here's a man who's accomplished so much. Like we just said, recording with Mick Jagger, playing with Peter Frampton, playing with Ace Frehley. And the thing that meant the most to him was seeing that picture of his parents in that more than anything. And when I got that, I thought of that last night as soon as I heard about his passing. And I said, you know what? That to me summarizes who John is. It didn't matter what the accomplishments were. What mattered to him is what was in his life, his friends, his family. That was the most important thing. When he sent me that message, I'll never forget that, because I was like, wow, he wasn't like, hey, cool pictures with me and Peter Frampton, me and Ace Frehley. I was like, no, thank you for a picture of my parents in there. So it's just something I'd never shared that before yesterday. I put it on my Facebook page last night, but to me, it just summarized who John is as a person. And if you read all the posts online since he passed last night, the word you find most often is what a gentleman he was. And that is totally the experiences I've had with him, the perfect word. He was just such a gentleman, so nice to everybody. So I just wanted to share that, because to me, I think that's a pretty cool thing, that after speaking for 2 hours, his biggest thing and that made him proudest and happiest in that interview was seeing a picture of his parents in it.
Yeah, so. That's a wonderful story, and doesn't surprise me that you would do something like that because of what you do. So kudos to you again for pushing the right buttons. I mean, the reason why you're again, I'm not going on a Mike little not rant, but the reason why you get such a good reaction, people want to come back to your shows, because you approach things a bit differently. You're not into drama and all this like that other stuff, that you're not trying to capitalize and post videos and do this. I mean, look at all the stuff that's out now about Mick Mars, and you haven't called me once to say, hey, let's do a podcast on that. It's like
no interest.
There's enough of that out there. What we really try to do, and I say we like as if this is my show too, but as
when we do this together, it's we.
Yeah, I'm your Ed McMahon, maybe a slightly thinner version of him, but is really just to have fun, and we do these are not fun to do, but this is where we pay respect, because there should be acknowledgement for people who were very significant to the music community, and that's the basis of what we speak about is music, and just good people, so yeah, that I love hearing stuff like that. It really does. I do, because it almost kind of makes you, I'm sure you even said to yourself, maybe like, oh man, I wish I would have had him on again. Now it's like, it's too late.
I'm not going to lie. I did think that last night, because he was just such a great guest. And like I said, we spoke for 2 hours. And I wanted to be respectful. He was already giving me so much of his time. I could have probably spoken another 2 hours. And, I'll share one thing that we spoke about in that interview. We were just talking about what a gentleman he is, how nice he is. Everybody has nothing but, every single comment one's been nicer than the next online. However, John wasn't a pushover. And I remember him talking with me about the night in '88 when Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons joined Frehley's Comet on stage. And Gene wanted to play bass. They were doing Deuce, and Gene wanted to play bass, and asked John, hey, can I have your bass for this song? John, you could sing the background vocals, whatever. And John was like, it's my stage. I'm playing bass. And I was like, good for John, man. Sticking up to Gene Simmons. Good for John. Like, this is my stage. You could come up there, you could sing, but I'm playing the bass. So he was a gentleman. He was a wonderful person. but he wasn't a pushover. Don't, I love that saying, don't mistake kindness for weakness. And John was like,
Mm-hmm.
my bass, my stage, you sing
Mm-hmm.
only, so
Right.
I love
Right.
that story. And look, I'm not trying to plug the hour and 40 minutes that I spoke with him and telling people to watch it. But if you want to know about John and his life and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
go back and watch it because we covered really everything about his life and his career. And it's an amazing career. You mentioned Eugene before, like as we were getting ready to do this, I almost forget about that, and I
Mm-hmm.
love that song. As soon as you mentioned that, I'm humming the bass line out here with you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just it's sad. It's a reminder that, like you said before, our heroes aren't going to be here forever. And
Mm-hmm.
I will always look to celebrate the musician's legacy and the fun side of it and the drama that goes on, and whether it's Mick Mars or the Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley thing. I kind of don't care about that. It's about music's about having fun and enjoying life. And John added to that in a lot of ways. And every time I met him and every time I saw him perform, that's the way I felt. I
Well,
was happy and enjoying life.
if you're truly a fan of any of those bands, you're not enjoying seeing your heroes slugging it out. I
Yep.
mean, the only way you're enjoying that is if you're a hater on one side or the other. Like, we know there's a lot of people who are, huge Ace Frehley fans and they're not a fan of the new lineup, so they're gonna jump on all over that. You're gonna have
Yep.
those types, but my thing is, like, if you're really truly a fan of the band, and this is my own opinion, you just don't want to hear your heroes slugging it out all over social media. I don't get anything out of it.
To me, what I respected about John is that he obviously had some of these issues with Ace, but there was never these headline stories. He just went about it quietly, put out these CDs. I know it was years ago and it's a different time, but he was never out there in the press, bad mouthing Ace about this or that. It was really just about the music and the fun. And that to me, again, I'll,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. So, with all the Frehley's Comet albums, and he played to me on all those classic ones from the 80s. He's got a few songwriting credits on those,
Mm-hmm.
especially some of the
Mm-hmm.
fractured songs. He's co-writing those. Like you said, he was kind of the project manager, keeping things together when Ace was falling apart. So, if you love some of those Frehley's Comet albums, even if his name's not next to them as a co-writer, keep in mind that John was in some ways the glue that was holding that together at times. So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
I'll always be grateful for that. And it's a sad day that he's no longer with us, but we say this all the time. He's got the memories and the music with us that'll last forever, and that to me
Yeah.
is what it's all about.
And I know I'm going to be a repeat machine, but even if I was looking, Todd, I looked for Peter, like Peter Frampton, looked at like their Twitter just to see if they made any sort of comment, and I did see Todd said it was just yesterday that he said it got a missed call from John, and he texted him and said basically like, "Hey, did you call me?" And John was like, "I butt dialed you, sorry, whatever."
Mm.
And that was literally yesterday morning, and
Oh
now
wow, I
Todd
didn't
and
see that.
now Todd's like, "Oh my god, like I wish I would have almost," and I'm paraphrasing, picked up that
Mm-hmm.
call or whatever, because how has this happened? You just literally
Wow.
like, yeah. So yeah, I saw that on his Facebook page. But
Mm.
my point being is, like we always say, don't take anything for granted. If you have things hanging out there with friends and family that you are debating to get resolved, or you're struggling with that, the time is now. Take advantage of that time
Yep.
and try to make amends so you don't have any regrets, because there are times, unfortunately, when it is too late. And I wouldn't want to see anybody have to suffer with that.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, on that note, I think I'll just say in closing here, I'll thank John for the interview, his kindness over the years. Every time I met him, what a great gentleman he was.
Mm-hmm.
The music and the way he touched every single person that he met and that he spoke with over decades. They all feel the same way. So it's a sad loss for everybody, but I'm guaranteeing he will not be forgotten.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
All right, buddy. I guess until next time, hopefully it's a better, funner topic than this.
Yeah.
John, my condolences to his family and friends. Rest in peace, and let's go play some of that music.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, everybody. Alrighty. Once again, I'd like to thank John for being such a great guy with me, not only in the interview that we did a couple of years ago, but through all the years when I met him. And it's so wonderful to see that everybody else who's ever met him says the exact same things. John, you will definitely be missed. My condolences once more to your family and friends. Rest in peace. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.